this week's challenge was definitely at the more difficult end of the spectrum. So let's go through the solution to see how we solve it. So first of all, we have all of our sample superstore data. But what we're really going to be interested in is the year of our order date as a field and our customer ID. So those are the two that we're going to be really focusing on for this challenge. So first of all, let's make that field for year of order date. So by duplicating our order date field and then converting the date to a year number, then we get our year of order field. And then we're just going to aggregate by grouping on the year of order, the customer ID and the customer name. So initially when I was building this challenge, I only grouped on the customer ID, but I realized I'd probably want the customer name to be across all of the fields as well, across all of the rows, sorry, as well. So that's why I came back and retroactively put in the customer name. So that's one of the beauties of Prep. You can change your mind and bring things back in that you haven't previously brought through. Okay, so then we want to work out the first purchase for each customer. So this is just a level of detail calculation, an LOD. So we're grouping by our customer ID and taking the min of the year of order there. So just the same calculation that we'd write if we were in Tableau Desktop. And then how do we get a row for each customer where even if they didn't order, we get a row? So we're going to do a bit of scaffolding here. So we group by our year of order. So we just get 4 rows of 2018, 19 and 2021. And we're just going to call this field year. And then we're going to join that on. So we want our year of order to be less than or equal to our year. Nope. Is that the right way around? I always get confused with scaffolding and reading it the right way around. So I definitely had a play around with this as well. But I guess that looking at this, it looks like this has been multiplied by 4. So that's kind of the result we were expecting. I am thinking now that I'm looking at it after I finished writing this challenge that possibly we could have added in another join clause here where we had the year of order equal to the year, maybe. No, don't worry. Don't worry, because what we get at the end of this, if you can see, say for example, if I choose my customer, let's find customer, there's a particular customer I was using, this one, because he ordered first of all in 2020 and then didn't order again in 2021. Then we can see that we have his first purchase being in 2020, the year field coming in as 2020, and then we also get this 2021 now as well, so our scaffolding. So even though this row didn't exist before our scaffold, it now does exist. So that's doing what we want. But in cases like this, where we had all of the rows we needed already, so we can see that we've got 2018, 2019, and 2020 and 21, then we get these additional rows coming from the scaffolding. So we just need to group by everything, basically, and take the max year of order in each of our year groups, and then we get our sort of filtered down data set where we have a row for each customer and each year in the data set associated with that customer. There are definitely some different ways that you could have done this part, so this is just one example of a way that you could have done it. Okay, now we're looking at creating that year-on-year difference calculation. So basically what we need to do is we need to work out the number of customers in each year, so that's our first step. So we want for each customer and for each cohort, sorry, for each year and for each cohort to work out the number of customers. So sorry, I just skipped a step there where we assigned that flag saying if our year is equal to our order year, then a 1, so they did order, else a 0. And I did it numerically so that I could just do a sum here now. So I can just sum up all of the customer numbers in the year and cohort. So I was definitely, as I was building this workflow, checking against my Tableau workbook to check that these numbers were correct. And now that I've been working on this problem for quite a while, these numbers are quite burned into my brain for the short term anyway. So these are looking correct, but that's the beauty of this particular challenge, is that you can be checking against the data set in Tableau. Okay, so then we've just renamed a little bit, so rename that order to number of customers. And now what we want in order to create that year-on-year difference is we want, for example, in 2019, we want this number of customers from 2018 to pop up on the row next to it. So for example, if I look at my 2018 cohort, if I just click on them there, then in 2019, I want to have this 437 number in one field. I want this 595 number to be in a separate field here. So the way that I can do that is by joining this back onto itself after I've added a year onto my year field. So create a new field called year+1 where I'm literally just adding one to that field, and then renaming this field to be last year's customers, so that when I do that join back, then I join on my first purchase, so my cohort, I join year equals year+1. And now if I take a look at that 2018 cohort, for example, 2018 cohort rather than the year, then I can see that my 2018, I don't have an extra value, but this 2019 value, I now have my 437 for 2019, and last year, 2018, I have that 595 value. Okay, and then it's just a simple minus calculation, so number of customers minus last year's customers. And then I can get rid of that last year's customers field and rejoin it to that dataset before we aggregated it, making sure we join on the first purchase and the year. Okay, so then the next thing we want to do is we want to work out, did the customer order last year or not? So we're doing a very similar methodology here, where we're just going to group by our year, group by our customer ID, and then take the maximum of that order field. So again, that's why I used a numeric one here, so that if they didn't order, then we'll just get a 0. There we go. So again, just doing that year+1, joining it back to itself, and having now renamed that order field to be last year order instead. So then we join it back to the original data set, and now we have our last year order and our order in the same row, so we can do our customer classification. So we can say if our year is equal to the first purchase, so if our year is equal to the cohort, then they are a new customer. Else, if that order equals 0, so in that current year that we're thinking of, if the order equals 0, then they're going to be a sleeping customer. If our last year order is 0, but this year the order is 1, then that means that they didn't order last year, but they have ordered this year, so they're a returning customer. And if the last year order was 1 and this year order is 1, then they're a consistent customer. Okay, and then we have our classification. So we've done all the steps that we needed to do, and we can just go back and join this up to our data set before we aggregated it. And we're doing here a right join to catch it all. So we're doing it on the customer ID, and we're saying our year of order here is equal to the year. Okay, and we can just see that all we've done here now is a little bit of renaming. And the important thing here is to make sure that we keep the customer name and ID from this step rather than from the original data set, so that we have a full number of values. So there's no nulls in our customer ID, for example. There's no nulls in our customer name, if I can find that field as well. But there are nulls, for example, here where the order equals 0, so there hasn't been an order. Okay. So if you are interested in carrying through different amounts of information through, then you could make sure that you include those fields here in our aggregate at the start, but those are the only ones that I thought I was interested in for this challenge. So hopefully that was a fun challenge. It's definitely interesting to think about how you would solve something in Tableau Desktop and how you'd solve it in Tableau Prep. It's interesting to see which one feels easier. For me, this way definitely feels easier than in Tableau Prep, because you can kind of see what the data looks like at every step. But for many who are very used to Tableau Desktop, they'll probably prefer that. But okay, thanks very much for watching, and thanks for taking part in the challenge.